reading this book right here. Good old Midnight
Jeff,
Rising.
is that Jefferson Davis right there?
Not Jefferson Davis. This is John Brown.
Oh, John Brown. I was like, whoa. Is that
Good old John Brown. And I'm at the part now with the title of the chapter is Into the Breach. That means when they start the attack, right? When they take the arms and fight against the government, which is, I guess, the theory of the Second Amendment. Let's see what happens there, you know?
Yeah.
And I would like to point out even, too, in the context of history is happening all around us. And one thought I have in regards to what's happening right now in Myanmar, I'm mispronouncing the name. Myanmar?
Myanmar, yeah.
Yeah. Imagine they had a Second Amendment. Would it change anything? I don't know. Because if a military coup happens and the military has all the weapons and they decide they're in charge and they decide to shoot people and they have high-grade weaponry,
right.
Is that a defense to have an AR-15 for the regular civilian, you know?
That's
the argumentative topic. Like, I look at it like that. But at the same time, why is no one intervening? Should anyone intervene? What is happening? You know, like, and then how many times has America lived that in South America? And now we see the result. Now we want to build a wall.
Yeah. we went into the basement, we like had a party, and now we're just locking the door. We're never going into the basement again because it's messy.
Like, imagine like you live on a city block and you have this neighbor four houses down, and you decide, you know, screw that neighbor. They have a nice candelabra. I don't have a nice candelabra. And it's nothing significant. It's not your entire house. It's not your lawn. It's just a candelabra, and like a little candle holder, right? And saying candelabra, I think is a funny word. And then you imagine you go down 4 houses, you break into the candelabra, and it has candles that are lit, right? And you just smack them off, and you take the candelabra and bring it back home. Boop. You smack the candles off, aka the leaders, right, in South America. You smack them off, and now it starts a fire in that house. And it starts building and build. You only live 4 houses down. And it starts building and building and building. And then now the entire house is on fire. And now the people are running out that house and going to the next house. But now that house is catching on fire. And then again, and then again. And your solution is not to put out the fire. Your solution is to build a wall so the fire can get around it. Fire carries with oxygen. You breathe oxygen. Your house will burn.
Right.
That's how I see that situation. You know what I mean? Just for a candelabra, you know?
We'll end this after this, I promise. But
I'm doing this on Instagram because I'm actually surprised it's still going. I guess it's 2 hours. But it normally cuts off after like an hour, which is why this is the part I chose. But I'm assuming it's 2 hours, which to me is still long enough.
I just wanted to ask you if you've seen the Lincoln documentary on CNN that's happened the past few weeks. Have you seen that?
I don't got cable.
All right. Okay. I don't think it's on YouTube, but I'm gonna go ahead and just send it to you, however, in whatever format I can. But you got it because you got to watch it. But I bring that up because a lot of people who have guns and champion gun rights and some Republicans, they hold up Lincoln as this guy who exemplifies the perfect president and somebody who was always who was always anti-slavery, who freed the slaves. And I encourage people to watch this documentary because it's not just white historians. It's actually white male historians. It's also historians who are women, historians who are black, and people of all different ages actually giving a perspective on Lincoln. And the thing that I really learned about Lincoln was that he wasn't a perfect president. He wasn't a perfect person, but that is why he was the man for the job, because he started off as one thing, right? He said that, you know, he didn't mind slavery being in the states that it was already in. And he said that he would keep slavery if he could end the war. Like he said that. That's Lincoln's words.
Yep.
But he let people like Frederick Douglass in as an advisor. And through his conversation, through his discourse with Frederick Douglass, Lincoln starts to change. He changes as a person. He changes his perspective. He changes his policies even after the Civil War ends. He advocates for the 13th Amendment. As radical as that was, he had just ended the Civil War. He's trying to mend and heal this nation, and he advocates for these newly freed people, formerly slaves, to have the right to vote and to have the right to be able to elect a president.
Yep.
So I want to encourage people to learn about Lincoln because he started off as one thing. He started off as a white supremacist. He started off as somebody who did not believe that slavery needed to be changed. However, he did not stay stagnant. He did not say, I'm not going to change. He actually let people into his life, talk to people with different perspectives, and because of that, he ended up changing. He ended up becoming a more compassionate, a more complete person. And that is why he is one of our greatest president, maybe our greatest president we've ever had, because he was able to change. He was able to look at people's lives and say, I can make this better because I know their situation. I know their perspective now. So I just want to encourage people to learn more about him and stop seeing him as this hero. See him as a
Yeah.
person, because when we see him as a hero, you can't relate to him. You can't relate to somebody who's perfect. You can relate
Yep.
to somebody who's a person, though. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Like Lincoln was a huge segregationist, but he did advocate for the end of slavery, the end of the continuation of it. You know, um, and it's funny, like again, talking about history, if Buchanan or Polk, like if those people were decent presidents, maybe things would have been different. But they were all just terrible, and arguably one of the some of the worst. Yeah, and even so, even then, like think about it. Frederick Douglass advised Lincoln. Frederick Douglass also gave some advice to good old John Brown, and John Brown's rationale was like, nope, we gotta cut the head off the beast. And he went to the Harper's Ferry, and ooh, baby. And I encourage this book too. This is a dope book. I think one conversation that happened interestingly with Frederick Douglass and John Brown is John Brown was saying, "Hey, we got arms, we got men. We're gonna do this. We're gonna go to Virginia. We're gonna take up arms, burn a plantation down, arm those slaves, and just keep growing and just take it over." Um, and Frederick Douglass is like, "You're crazy, and we're not gonna do that. I'm not supporting this." And it's crazy. He even had Harriet Tubman. He met with Harriet Tubman, and she was supposed to come down, but she got sick. She's like, no, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't read too much into that backstory, but he tried it, and I think my big takeaway so far from this book, and I guess a good segue to end this live for here, I'm talking back, bringing it back to the concept of gun reform, is this is the United States. White people, take the lead, solve this issue, because y'all made it. Like, and that's, to call it out as it is. John Brown did that to a degree. He's like, I'm gonna end this. He took it to an extreme, an arguably crazy extreme. Um, but again, and that's an extreme. That's a reality when you have the right to own a gun. Is that a common theme that we have today? Because that was still, remember, 100 years after, not even 100 years, like 60 or 70, under 100 years after the Declaration or that amendment was created, John Brown leads a raid on Harper's Ferry. Why? Because he had access to guns, was able to arm, and took over, and did one of the smartest things, took over an armory. You know what I mean? And did so successfully to a degree.
To a degree.
Is, is that this is, can you even imagine that happening today? Can you imagine somebody, regular civilians, storming a military facility or an armory? Personally, I can't, but we have seen that it's possible to storm the Capitol
Yeah,
without
I
guns,
never thought that would happen.
without a
So
single fire being shot. We can storm the Capitol. Not a single bullet was fired that day. So think about that. Think about the power you have in numbers. Think about the powers you have with your feet. Are guns necessary? And even more so, are they necessary in the perception of the way we have them? And are they necessary to have such high grade weaponry? Knowing the argument that you need to defend yourself against a tyrannical government is impossible because they have nukes. Until you can get a nuke, and I'm not advocating, please do not get a nuke. Um, what are you truly doing? What are you truly defending? What are you defending it from? What are you defending it for? And if it's for this country, the majority of this country does not feel safe with your supposed right. And that right needs to be updated and changed. And I said it on that discussion on Facebook, and I'll say it here again. I'm not for taking away guns. If you want to have the right to own a gun, sure. But you are now responsible. You are now liable. You chose to exercise this right, and then you have the right to carry around that voter ID. Carry around that magical piece of paper, register, do all those other stuff that you want to advocate for voting. Apply it to the weapons. Apply it so that people can feel safe and feel safe in their communities. And if you don't feel safe in your community, I'll tell you right now, a gun is not going to solve it. And with
right,
that, yeah, and it is reality.
yeah,
Like, you don't feel safe because of the people in your community. Is it the people in the community or the fact that you don't know them? You don't feel safe. You feel like someone's going to break in your house. I've seen some of these houses. I wouldn't want to break in there, but like, that's jokingly. But like, if you feel someone's going to break into your house, why is that? Why? What developed had someone broken into your house before? Because then you get into the context of security and even working with your neighbors, neighborhood watch programs. You see, you have all these other avenues that lead away from the guns, right? Because those things are designed for one thing and one thing only. And is that something you want to bear in your life? Because we even hear the discussions. We care about so much about the vets, right? Listen to their stories and the traumas they have from having to use those weapons. Is that something you want on the normal citizen? Is that worth
right,
it?
right. It's like it should be a last resort. It shouldn't be.
Yeah. It's not a solution.
It shouldn't be a solution. It shouldn't be your first option. It shouldn't be your first solution, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you said before about what your professor said or your teacher. Like, yes, we do have the right to of freedom of speech. We do have the right to bear arms. We do not have the right against consequence. We don't
Mhm.
have we if you do something, you will pay the price. And that
Yeah, you have to be willing to accept that.
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, with that, we'll end this one. And
Oh,
if you
what's
watch this
next
far,
next week? What's next week?
so oh, baby. So next week, and next week we're talking about the Chauvin trial. We're talking about the trial that's, to me, historic, but that one's gonna be about police reform and advocacy for all that stuff. And everybody saw today, topics can vary, but the focus is going to be on the trial that's happening right now in Minnesota and the consequences that can happen if things go one way or the other. And then also talking about the history behind it and the similarities that we saw with Rodney King. And I'm going to be bringing up some things that I saw relevant that didn't happen this time that may lead to a different outcome, and kind of discussing the feelings of that, because when George Floyd was killed, we saw this nation and the world light up. There was a huge uproar, and here we are months later, basically a year later, almost an official year. How far have we come? So that's going to be the topic or the discourse for next week.